Hello to all, here today in the Tier 7 Commonwealth Destroyer, the HMCS Haida. We're on the map Haven and the mode is Domination. We're in 6 to 8 matchmaking, so we're middle tier. And we find ourselves without a carrier, thankfully, and no radars on their team except possibly the Edinburgh if he's brought one, so that should be pretty comfy for this matchup. Anyhow, starting off, we're continuing on a little bit with our Premium Destroyer series, or mid-tier Premium Destroyer series, kind of prompted by our T61 drop and also the recent set of directives. Directive 4 just dropped today, so one of the easiest to do missions is base experience on Commonwealth, Pan-European, and such ships. So the Haida, along with her half-sister, not in terms of ship class, but in terms of just being dubbed half-sisters, Bliskavika, which we'll probably be covering later, do qualify for this relatively easy to complete directive, so just going to get on that. Anyhow, HMCS Haida, found in the game as a Tier 7 destroyer. She's a tribal class destroyer built for the Royal Canadian Navy at the beginning of the Second World War by the British Navy, or by the British shipyards. She appears in the game as a rather specialized Tier 7. So first off, note she's fairly tanky for a destroyer, tribal class, pretty large profile for a Tier 7 destroyer, you'll see. So this comes with some benefits, including a fairly substantial hit point pool. I'm sitting at 18,000 with survivability expert here, so fairly chunky. Second off, she's extremely stealthy, one of the stealthiest, if not the stealthiest, gunboat destroyer at Tier 7 at 5.7 kilometers. She's outmatched only by... I want to say she might actually be the stealthiest, because the two Japanese destroyers, which would normally be the stealthiest, are actually abnormally detectable at this tier. I believe the closest ships in your range are probably the Gajimada and the likes of Z39 at about 6.2 and 6.1 kilometers respectively. Anyhow, zooming into the cap, not afraid of any of the destroyers in this game. The Van Clint does outgun me when his reload booster is running, but I have tricks up my sleeve to deal with that if necessary. Dallas pushing through, which I would say is decidedly unwise. He's probably going to turn out, so no point contesting that even. Don't know why my Farragut decided to pop his American smoke here. Not like he's going to be doing much gunning. However, I will temporarily borrow it while I espouse the unique perks of the Haida. So, the Haida uses her 5.7 concealment and BV hit point pool along with her gun power in order to bully other destroyers. Really, the Haida finds her identity as a dedicated destroyer hunter for all intents and purposes. You'll see here she has a pretty average 4.5 second reload, and she's using the British I believe it's 4-inch gun, so 120mm gun. So nothing exceptional about the reload or the gun. She has 6 rifles in an ABX, or ABY layout actually. Her X turret has been converted into a AA, dual-purpose AA gun in this fixing, or in this iteration of the Haida in the game. So she has 6 twin turrets that you can use as main battery guns. You can see here, if you compare my shell arcs from shooting the Bayern at 8 kilometers to the Dallas at 11, they get much floatier. This is something you should be very familiar with if you've ever shot any of the British destroyer guns. They're pretty identical at range. They get very floaty, even though the initial shell velocity is actually not half bad. But these 6 guns, coupled with a relatively short reload, are what allow the Haida to do her job. Now, I've been sitting in this American smoke, just borrowing it, farming for a little bit. Not that I've been very successful, thanks to the relatively floaty nature of my shells and the armored nature of the Bayern. So I'm going to go out there and try to do my job a little better. Van Clint's over there. Perf was the one who took C-Cup, apparently. So I do have to be a bit careful. But anyway, in spite of her 6 rifles, she has improved high explosive shell. You'll see a 1900 HE alpha here compared to most other destroyers at the tier, such as the Mahan and such. They have about 1700 HE alpha per shell. So this improved HE alpha actually means that her AP shell and HE shell are relatively comparable. I'm gonna shoot some shells into this perf as he's smoking up. I don't think he's looking at me anyway. I think I disabled his torpedo tube on this side. So that's why we know that she has good concealment, good health, and relatively okay guns. Not super impressive, but okay. So the way she uses the Haida behaves in terms of destroyer hunting, if I can get my hands on one, no one's contesting my cap, is that she uses this sort of combination of British consumables. She has the British Hydroacoustic, the self-defense hydro. She was the first ship to actually have it in this game, I believe. Along with her good concealment to kind of creep up into caps and ambush enemy destroyers. Now, this is facilitated by her smokescreen consumable. Note that it's not the normal smokescreen consumable icon. I'm going to let that Fubuki pass by, and then put some shells into this perf who's using his creeping smoke, who is quite relevant in this discussion because, just like the perf, the Haida has a creeping smoke. So the Haida has that creeping smoke that allows you to go at quarter speed. Shores is on the other side of this rock, so I'm going to actually slow down and pop it. Shells land on the perf. Shores comes across the corner. And as you can see, I'm using this creeping smoke now to just deal with the shores. I'm quite close to him, so he might be able to blind fire me. My smoke detectability range, or smoke fire detectability range, by the way, is 2.3 kilometers. Up close, I can use AP. The AP is nothing special, but this guy is pretty good at blind firing. I'm gonna continue to trade with him, although he is clapping me pretty hard with fire RNG. Alright, finally he does die, although I get heavily punished by that triple fire as you saw. Gonna try and not die from that. He broke my engine as well, so gonna damage control what remains of this double fire and purge my torpedo tubes. I use those single fire torpedoes as you saw that I have not yet spoken about since my creeping smoke is still running. Going to take the chance to farm some damage. Now I have to be very careful here as I dump the tubes. Oh gosh. Alright, there's Dallas here. This is another potential AP target, by the way, but don't have time to switch, so I'm just going to stick with the HE. Trying to light a fire. Fire chance is pretty poor on these shells. These are the Fubuki triples gliding past me. Oof. And there's a Monarch here as well. But anyhow, I was a bit close to that cruiser who did blind fire me quite a bit. Uh-oh, okay, we're gonna be in a bit of trouble here. As I get resoundingly clapped by getting a bit too close. But as I was mentioning, we do have one torpedo tube on the Haida. She's still a traditional destroyer in that sense, so unlike the Friesland at Tier 9, for example, which is a pan-European destroyer, which is of modern design, the tribal class, while their designs varied over the various offerings in their line, most of them did retain some kind of torpedo armament. Now, in World of Warships, the Cossack appears as one of the tribals at Tier 8, and that's the Cossacks kind of as planned, as built. So this is, of course, the Cossack with 8 guns in 4 twin turrets in the ABXY layout, as I mentioned earlier, with that dual-purpose twin AA gun. The Haida is one of the later tribals, so one of her guns has been turned into a dual-purpose AA gun in order to give her some kind of anti-aircraft capability. Similarly though, they both have one single centerline quadruple torpedo, so the tribals were kind of designed as a gunboat destroyer which sacrifices torpedo armament for main gun performance. The Haida is a later variation on that, which after built at a point in which the British Navy realized that their destroyers probably need some kind of anti-aircraft capability. So as a result, you have that one single centerline torpedo. Just like with British torpedoes on British destroyers and cruisers, the Haida is able to single fire them, as you saw me ripple fire them there. Did manage to score that shores kill using the single fire torpedoes. Just kind of predicting whether he could slow down. And I was able to clean him up, hoping my allies clean up this game here because I don't want to keep you guys too long. Since we did manage to get a little too aggressive and get finished off. However, my mistakes aside in terms of over-aggression, you do want to be very aggressive with the Haida, hunting down your targets. I wasn't able to find a destroyer and hunt him down here in this game, but it is your key role. So keep that in mind as we head into our next game. My team is in fact doing the no cap kill all, more or less. Although they kind of are capping, so that's not really the no cap kill all, to be quite frank. Fubuki smoking up a monarch, questionable. He's probably just smoking for himself realistically, but I don't really know what he's trying to accomplish. He's just giving away his position as the Amagi absolutely blasts him with high explosives from the looks of it since he was on fire. But anyhow, the Haida is meant to be played as a almost hyper-aggressive cap contester. I was unable to do that this game because, well, no one decided to contest me. The Vanklin just went off to the flank and the Fubuki wasn't at my cap, so I was unable to show off that role. But as we close out this game, the Haida's excellent concealment and good gunpowder up close does allow her to do this. Only 46,000 damage, bunch of shells fired, 1 torpedo landed, 2 incaps, 2 kills, 1 flood, 5 citadels from the shores up close, 1 assisted capture, and 3 spotting ribbons. Team score wise, second from the top, but was a bit of a stomp fest. And detailed report wise, unusually this game, I used a lot of AP onto that shores, but usually you'll be using HE. Just gonna quickly battle on. Oops, okay, I'm not going to be busty, by the way. That's just a typo. I'm going to be rather busy in the coming days, so if you notice a reduced flow of content, I apologize in advance. Anyhow, heading into this match, we're in the map Trident, updated epicenter, in the Haida again, of course, and we're in 6 to 8 matchmaking, so we're middle tier. Middle tier puts us in an interesting position. The Haida is exceptionally powerful when she is top tier, because of course she is by far the stealthiest tier 7 destroyer that I can think of, and beat out by very few tier 5s. However, when you get to tier 8s with access to that concealment module, there are ships that can beat you. In terms of this game, there's not too many ships on the enemy team that will actually outspot me. La Fantasque at 6.4, and La Bliskavica at 6.8, and the Gaeta at, I believe, also 6.6 are all worse than me, but the Benson with his concealment module does get pretty close at 5.8. And if they had a Kagero, as my team does, for example, the Kagero with its 5.4 concealment would be able to beat me out. So it's a 4-destroyer game, no carrier, but 4 destroyers means I'll have plenty of opportunities to hunt down destroyers as I want to. Now, it's updated epicenters instead of domination, so it's going to be a little more difficult to control a cap per se, as the Haida is able to do with its excellent destroyer killing capabilities, because the destroyers are going to be a little more unpredictable in terms of the positioning. But we'll try to make it work. Anyhow, heading out onto the match, gonna just function as a scout. Anything we need to be worried about? There's Prince Eugen with Hydro, Bismarck with Hydro, but otherwise doesn't appear to be any radars. There's a Trento that pops up. Don't really want to mess with him myself personally. I am just going to spot him out from my 2 Atagos behind me and the Massachusetts. See if he pops fuel smoke here. Should probably disengage. There's a Bliska now. No concealment expert on him. He's spotted at 7.3. Gonna use my stealth advantage to try and get him to pop some shots. There's a whole bunch of torpedo destroyers here, so I'm gonna just Hydro in advance. So this is the self-defense Hydro I was mentioning earlier. Has an action radius of just about 3.5 kilometers for ship detection, and for torpedo detection I believe it's 3 kilometers. Oh no, it's 2.5 and 3.5, sorry. So it's 2.5 rather than 3.5. I'm juggling my throttle with that creeping smoke between half and quarter. Miyoko pops up. I'm gonna torp in case he does slow down or turn out like that, because that will cause him to shift in. Why is he detected, you might ask? Well, it's because he has smoke firing penalty bloom. Mine is 2.3. He's a cruiser. So his is definitely more than 2.3. He's quite close. You can see here the Bliska's torps. I'm gonna pop my speed boost and accelerate just slightly for a little bit, but that creeping smoke keeping me out of harm's way for the most part. Switching to armor piercing, gonna try on the Miyoko, but you can see most of the Miyoko's heavy armor kind of resisting my shells. Trento limping away. Miyoko fires again, giving him smoke firing penalty. He does dodge my torp spread with that manual single fire torpedo, but I'm going for fires. Get a bow fire. He's trying to blind fire into my smoke, but because I'm creeping forward for another 30 seconds or so anyway, I am able to harass him. Now I can't stay at half speed forever. You'll note as I'm fluttering between half and quarter speed. I can only stay at half speed temporarily. The maximum speed I can do in the smoke and stay concealed is about 12 knots, which is somewhere in between half and quarter. I see the Bliska creeping, or Gaeta over there. Second fire onto the Miyoko. I see the more ships here. So as a result, I have to flutter my speed if I want to do things. Miyoko's bow fire fades, so I'm going to try and relight that one. I'm punishing him for using his damage control earlier. Some more enemy torpedoes gliding through. Fast torpedoes, those are quads. I am going to burn him down more or less at the end of my smoke, and because I burned him down right as my last smoke buff ticked and faded, I'm able to get away quite nicely without any bloom whatsoever. I'm going to move towards the Gaeta with what's left of my Hydroacoustic. I outspot him by a country mile. I've done some decent gunboating. There's the Gaeta. He's not too close to any allies. Oh, there's a Bliska Vika as well. So I'm going to stay here and stay dark for a little bit. Alright, never mind. This Gaeta is going to force me to engage by basically spotting me out. So I'm going to engage with my anti-destroyer HE. Now it's not anti-destroyer in the sense that semi-armor piercing shells on Italians are anti-destroyer, for example, but it does have higher than normal HE alpha. Not quite to the extent that SAP does, but 2200 is a fair margin more. That's 300. That's 200 more than most HE shells of the caliber. Looks like he's not running Last Stand based on how drastically he's slowed down after losing engine. My Hydra's still running for 23 seconds to keep me safe. Set fire, and he drops. I'm gonna re-accelerate, pop my engine, because as expected, there are torpedoes headed this way, so let's see if I can torpedo beat properly. Now the Haida is a fairly large destroyer, as I mentioned earlier in the last commentary video. No one's shooting me, but because of her large size, she does not accelerate or decelerate very well. Very sluggish in that regard. Just continuing to use my positional advantage at this point. I'm basically spearheading this this push on this flank, while the enemy's been pushing that flank. Nothing's shooting at me, so I'm just gonna open water gunboat this Scharnhorst. Now I could do this from the safety of my smoke screen. My smoke screen consumable is back up, but I do want to just get people to trade with me. I have plenty of health left to trade with, so I'm going to play a little more aggressively. Going to let my allies shred this Benson for me. Alright, things are getting a bit hot. You can see that battleship in the distance opening up on me, so I'm going to pop my smoke. Remember, I have to slow down before it conceals me, so it's going to take a couple of seconds still, just like a normal smoke. Just going to hammer this guy. You can see the gun angles on the tribal class are not great. My last turret is not actually this turret up here, but the rear turret. So unlike the Jervis, for example, which is similar to the tribals in many aspects, it's a J class, so related, but not exactly the same. Oh. Accelerate a little bit. Sadly unable to finalize the Benson kill. Oh, never mind. thankfully able to finalize the Benson kill. I did slip briefly out of my smoke there because I went to half throttle and forgot to throttle back down. But yeah, you can see the gun angles on the Haida are fairly horrible, if I'm being frank. They really are unimpressive. And be careful, I only have a minute left on my smoke, and if I bump into that Le Fantasque, I know he's kind of low because I saw him earlier. On the map, I don't know if you noticed, but he was fairly low. But I do want to be conservative. I'm going to push toward the center of the epicenter here because I do want to contest. I know about where the Bliska is. He's the one who smoked up recently. The Le Fantasque obviously doesn't have smoke screen. I have 27 seconds on my smoke, so I can engage him and then re-disengage by just allowing the smoke screen to recloak me. Amalfi over here who can heavily damage me. So I've given away my position outside of the cap, unfortunately, but we did secure a priority target. Gun range, as you can see, is actually quite good. Sitting pretty at about 12.3 kilometers. This is my last smoke puff, so I need to be careful about firing. However, at range, those lazy arcs mean I don't land that many shells, even though I do spew out quite a few. I'm gonna stay right here on the edge of the cap because I know about where the Bliska is. He's been firing over here. Let's see if he fires again. Oh, okay, so I'm gonna use the single fire torps to create a bit of a narrow spread. I'm gonna sit right here on the edge of the cap because I know my detection range beats his. So I want to ideally have him come out and be spotted by me, but not detected. Now I probably should have popped my Hydro if I was gonna do that. I do get a brief glimpse of him. Oh, okay, and Amalfi's still inside my gun bloom. Unfortunate, I was trying to get the blind shots. It's gonna be complicated. Gonna bring myself up to speed in that case, since I've given up my concealment advantage. Bliska firing and trading. He's up a lot of health, so I should probably actually disengage instead of trading here. But I have plenty of allies, and remember I have that high alpha. He doesn't have any damage reduction capabilities, unlike, say, the Le Fantasque that we helped dispatch earlier. And with his death, since the Amalfi continued to glide out, we should be quite fine. I did have a Le Fantasque helping me with him, of course, and the Le Fantasque of the French gunboat is extremely potent. Well, that's all the destroyers dispatched now. So we should own this cap center, so I'm just gonna fire openly at this Eugen. My 120mm guns don't have any improved penetration or anything, so they do not penetrate the Eugen's 27mm plate. 120/6 obviously gives me just about 20mm of penetration, so I can just barely pen high tier destroyer armor plate. Amalfi skims me with a sap. Thankfully it wasn't a heavy blow, so he only hit me with like one pen it looked like, but it is going to prompt me to pop my smoke, not interested in trading openly with the likes of these guys. If the sap is going to slam me, the sap is very heavy, so, or very heavy anti-destroyer round, so gonna be nice and safe. Oh my god, this Massachusetts player put one of those disgusting camouflages onto his Massachusetts, even though it already has its own. Filthy. I'm gonna switch over to the Amalfi, one because he's a heavier threat to me, and two because he doesn't heal. Do set a fire on the Massachusetts, looks like, with my last salvo onto him. So I'm looking forward to that ticking. Fire chance on these heavy HE shells is not great, it's like 5% or something. Do need to keep an eye on my smoke timer, remember? Same creeping smoke as the, well, not the same creeping smoke as the Italians actually. The Italians have this full speed creeping smoke, which is quite interesting, allows them to go full speed. I have to do half or quarter speed in the meantime, but it works out. One of the neat tricks that you can do with this quarter speed creeping smoke that I did not get to show off, unfortunately, in this past two sets of commentaries is you can kind of go into a cap zone with an enemy destroyer there, and then creep toward him once you start the engagement. So once you start the engagement at 5-7, close the distance a little bit, you pop your smoke, you both disengage, but you pop your Hydro with a 3.5 kilometer range and the creeping smoke, and you just creep towards him at quarter speed, relight my fire on the Massachusetts, and you perform an ambush that way. Looks like that fire is going to tick, so I have 10 seconds left on this Bismarck. Unfortunately, thanks to my horrific gun arcs, unlike the Jervis's great gun arcs, or the Gajamaras, great gun arcs. They are the same ship class, of course. I can't use my red turret, so I'm gonna have 2 guns here. Last puff of smoke's gonna be able to fire once, and then I'm gonna be out. So that's my last smoke screen, so I can no longer play super aggressively. These are a very valuable tool, and in a longer game, or a game where you aggressively use your smokes, you can easily run out. I'm not running Superintendent on this captain, so unfortunately this does mean that I have a bit reduced aggression endurance in comparison. Fire still ticking onto that Massachusetts. They'll probably allow us to crest just over 100,000 damage if we're lucky. Oh, no, it ticks out. Also, he's turning in. I give him 2 of the manuals first. My team is trying very hard to throw. There's a 4k HP Amalfi that I can't deal with. It's turning all the way in. Okay. Expecting him to continue turning a little bit out, controlling the center. Now I can't contest that Bismarck. He's a bit too high. I need my HSF Garage Bay and my Gorizia to do something about that. The key threat to me now is the Amalfi, so what I'm going to try and do is be a little bit creative. I'm going to pop my speed boost. Now I'm much stealthier than the Amalfi. We need kills in order to finalize this game. I have to hope to God that the Massachusetts catches one of those predictive torps. My torps are fairly heavy, single fire. If I go here. So they each hit for about 16,700. So a fairly hefty alpha. My torpedo does strike the Massachusetts, thankfully. Oh, I wasn't paying attention to the Amalfi. He's fast, remember, so. Alright. Nothing I can do about that. I got a bit too close. His turrets are thankfully turned the other way. I'm gonna try and use my high HE alpha, but if he gets one single shot off, he's gonna blast me, so. My aim was to get onto the side of the Amalfi where his turrets were not turned and to kill him, but that did not go very well. Okay, thankfully he dies. Thank God for that. Whew. So yeah, my aim was to like go around him, get onto his broadside, and try and just hammer him with some quick shots, but that didn't work out, as the Prince Eitel sends some shells my way. Thankfully, I got some help from my HSF Garage Bay, who managed to survive being beached. I guess maybe only the Massachusetts was targeting him. Maybe the Amalfi was busy with me. Oh my god. I am briefly plane spotted by the Amalfi's bloody spotter plane. My AA is not fantastic. This is at almost 100% AA, by the way. Okay, I really need this plane to die. Like, right now. Okay, thank fucking God. Jesus Christ. Dead people's planes making an attempt on my life. Good times. My single fire tubes are up, but as I mentioned, they have extremely high alpha, so even punching that Massachusetts on the belt, I did about 5k to him because he didn't have that much health left, but very capable of dealing heavy damage. I'm expecting him to turn back in, but just in case he turned out, I gave him that. Just gonna dump the manual spread in order to just get a better spread overall. I have plenty of allies, even though the Prince Eitel is fairly healthy. At 900 points, all I have to do is wait for him to tick out. Can try and squeeze in some extra damage by simply putting some damage onto him. Remember, the Prince Eitel has a base 30-second reload. Gun bloom time is 25 seconds, so after he fires, if you fire immediately, you can fire one time. Let's see. 995, he fired, but there I could have squeezed off one shot because he's the lone battleship left on the map. Taken a little bit of damage, tried for fires, for example, and then faded back into concealment. Anyhow, a bit better this game. Obviously, I didn't die, so that tends to help with your damage rates. 266 shells fired. You can see a whole bunch of shatters. I don't have any improved penetration, and my destroyer guns, as I iterated, only pen about 20 millimeters. One torpedo strike on the Massachusetts, but an important torpedo strike. One plane shot down. Fuck you, Amalfi guy, spotter plane. 5 in caps, 3 kills, 6 fires, 3 defender ribbons, 2 capture flags, solo capture, I guess, but it's epicenter, and 5 spotting ribbons. Team score wise, again top of the pack, but this time by a fair margin. This time, instead of getting carried across the finish line after making a big mistake, did pay a lot more attention and play quite a bit better, I would say. So 2,500, nice reward there. And how damage distribution wise, you can see you don't really use the AP. I had that small opportunity earlier when that Miyoko gave me broadside at the beginning of the match to use it, but for the most part, you stick to the HE. You get a lot of shatters when you're shooting non-destroyers, but it's not so bad. So 7,500 from shells, and then 20,000 from fires. Fires are useful. It's kind of hard to set fires with a 5% fire chance, but it's not too bad. As you can see here, hit a variety of targets. Anyhow, heading back into port. Here's our tribal class destroyer. This is the alternate camo. This is the alternative camouflage that you earn by completing the British Destroyer collection, actually, since she is a Commonwealth destroyer, related kind of to the Brits. So she gets access to that. As you can see, she sits very tall in the water. So she is related to the J-class destroyers. I've sold my Gajimada, but if I go to the Jervis, which I'm currently still grinding on, you'll see the Jervis also has 3 120mm turrets. However, they're in an ABX layout compared to our ABY layout. So if we go to the rear here, you'll note that the Jervis's back gun is on a platform, the J-class destroyer. So this is a modification of the Haida's tribal class layout. If you'll note here, the Haida is slightly longer at the rear. So she used to have a turret here. If this was a Cossack, for example, the tier 8, this would be another main battery gun, but the Haida has had this replaced by a 102mm dual-purpose turret. So instead you have this ABY layout. So this leads to having pretty poor forward gun angles and rearward gun angles. So as a result, the Haida has to explode a lot of broadside. The Jervis, on the other hand, has her X turret mounted on this 360-degree rear turret, which gives her actually excellent firing arcs forward, just like the Gajimada. Rearward, they're a bit worse, something like this or this, but compared to the Jervis, the Haida has quite inferior gun angles. In exchange, though, the Haida does get much better concealment, 5.7 versus the Jervis's 6.3, and she does have access to speed boost and a creeping smoke, unlike the Jervis's lack of speed boost and static, short duration British smoke. Module-wise, take premium everything, but take probably Damcon, followed by smoke, followed by hydro and speed boost, but honestly, if you have a premium ship, you should be able to afford taking premium everything. Module-wise, main armaments in slot 1. In slot 2, you ideally, you'll want to take the improved hydroacoustic to get that long duration hydro to last even longer, just plus 20% action time. If you don't have access to a hydro module, get one in the armor for coal. If you can't afford it, then go with propulsion. In slot 3, you want the improved smoke. This is, of course, because the Haida has access to the creeping smoke, so extending the duration of creeping smoke extends the duration in which you can be extremely aggressive and kind of farm your way up. As you saw in that second game, I was able to use my smokes quite aggressively, and as a result, ended up being able to get quite a bit of battleship damage that I wouldn't otherwise have been able to do with the presence of the Amalfi and other such cruisers in the vicinity by firing just open water. Slot 3, I'm running rudder shift. So this is unlike most destroyers. The Haida does run, well, my Haida at least runs rudder over propulsion. Most destroyers run propulsion almost exclusively. This is, of course, because you don't have a traditional smoke. Thanks to the Haida using that creeping smoke, you're usually on the move. You almost never stop. And propulsion module actually only helps you in that initial starting from 0 speed, getting up to full speed. So if you're always moving, you're never really getting the full benefit out of propulsion module. So for Haida, I take steering gears. Pretty unusual for a destroyer. Build-wise, I'm running a 15-point captain right now. I have 17 captain points total, working toward my 19-pointer. Priorities are preventive maintenance, into last stand, into survivability expert, into concealment expert. Working up from there, I take BFT in order to emphasize her gun power. This is, of course, because this doesn't help in terms of the dual-purpose nature of AA. Haida's AA is pretty garbage, but in terms of main gun power, I want to maximize, or minimize rather, the amount of time it takes for me to actually kill my destroyer targets. Sometimes the windows in which you'll have with that hydro smoke trap to kill a destroyer is going to be really short, so BFT does give you a 10% DPM increase. Adrenaline Rush for a universal DPM increase as well, so again emphasizing that damage output. You are often going to be trading with enemy destroyers and taking fire from cheeky battleships or cruisers that are nearby, as demonstrated by my first game where I took a bit too much damage, in fact, and got a bit too ham, as some people might like to term it. But yeah, that's 15 points. My last 4 points are probably going to go into RPF. This is, of course, because the extra information given to you by RPF allows you to almost perfectly pinpoint where an enemy destroyer is if you're paying attention to the map. So it's extremely valuable. However, I can see merit for taking Superintendent, as you saw in that last game that I just played. I did end up running out of smokes, and as a result, my options became somewhat significantly limited thereafter. So Superintendent is extremely valuable to get extra smoke charge, but not every game will go that long, and you won't always have the opportunity to pop every smoke and farm that way. So take it at your discretion. If you want to take Superintendent, I would probably say give up BFT for it. I feel like RPF is super important for the role you're trying to play, so I'd rather take a 10% damage cut to take extra consumables than lose out on information, which helps basically every game. But personally, I find the improved gun power is consistently useful in all situations, whereas, as I did mention just now, Superintendent's only useful in a long grind fest, so I prefer BFT. So my final points will go into radiolocation. You could, of course, say fuck it to radiolocation if you're not particularly fond of it, and in that case, you could take Superintendent plus probably priority target. Expert loader, not really worth mentioning. Haida AP is extremely unimpressive, no improved penetration, and her rate of fire is not too great, so stick to the AG. Unless someone gives you absolute broadside at very close range, such as with that Shores. Anyhow, that'll be all for this Premium Destroyer continuation. So that was the HMCS Haida. Very fun, very aggressive boat with a unique niche. Sorry about spamming or repeatedly using the word very. And I personally find her to be a very fun, if challenging, torpedo boat with her own unique playstyle. Definitely a good one if you want to pick her up. Anyhow, I'll catch you all later, and I hope you enjoy. Cheers.